Not a direct threat. There's always, I mean, obviously there's always threats to major players coming into the market, and one of the phenomena that has been happening in the real estate world for about the last 10 years is that of large regional players in the form of people like Weikert Realtors and Howard Hanna that in some markets have made serious inroads. We've not seen a strong presence in our local market. Again, we don't, in many ways, we don't feel like we compete against the entire market because we are basically comprised of very high producing agents. Not to suggest that my competitors don't have high producers, but as an average, I think we stand out ahead of the crowd. So we don't really see it as a direct competition. Not to suggest that there is no threat by a major player coming into the market. From the standpoint of smaller independent offices, that is becoming increasingly difficult, and as you know, has led us to adopt a franchise a bit over a year ago after serving in the capacity of an independent broker for over 20 years. So don't see it as a direct threat, but something that we always keep in mind. Well, at the local level, we are now in production, we are the second largest franchise operation in Lancaster County. We are behind Prudential as far as overall production and agents. However, we are on a per capita production, we're pretty far ahead of the crowd, consistent with the model that RE/MAX has always propagated, and that is high production agents with an effective and efficient environment. So at a local level, we have about 55 agents at this point. We're closing in on $250 million worth of business for the quarter. Our statistics that we're probably the proudest of and sets RE/MAX apart from the competition is that at a local level, an average realtor handles about 7.3 transactions of business a year. The average for my sales associates here at RE/MAX is a bit over 19. Our nearest competition, which also happens to be our biggest competitor at Prudential, is running just under 9 transactions. So we kind of differentiate ourselves based on per capita production. That is also consistent at the international level. RE/MAX LLC has an average production per agent for the national, across the nation, of 15.3 transactions, where pretty much the National Association average again is about 7. So RE/MAX definitely differentiates itself at that level. As far as the international level, it is one of the largest franchises with something over 88,000 agents across the United States and 120-some thousand, I believe, across, I'm not even sure how many countries it is right now, but across the globe, if you please. So very large franchise. As far as the local level, we're pretty proud of what we've accomplished and who we are. But don't stack up entirely against the competition in numbers. But are pretty happy that we can be second in production behind Prudential, when in fact we're doing it with 55 agents and they're doing it with 300 and some. Well, we're certainly in an upward trend in the local economy. I think we are at a national level, but I'm much more familiar with our local real estate market. Statistically, year over year, February was about 6% better than a year ago in Lancaster County. In Dauphin County, just to our west, it was about 2%. Ironically, if you get a little further to the south and west, in Cumberland County, there was actually a 10% downturn. So the market really is spotty, while overall it is improving, and we're certainly optimistic about the market. We do believe that it will continue to grow. However, it will not be a lateral growth. It probably will be sort of a wavy line, if you please, on a graph. Do anticipate probably a 6 to 7% improvement in 2013 over 2012. pretty much in line with what we experienced here in Lancaster County between 2011 and 2012. So it seems like each month there's been some variation, but on an annualized basis it looks like about a 7% improvement, and we're anticipating roughly the same thing in 2013.
Auctions.
Well, we do compete. Obviously, every individual has the ability or believes they have the ability to sell it themselves, and sometimes they do. Unfortunately for most people, finding the buyer is actually the easy part. Getting it from contract to closing is where we earn our money, and that's where the expertise comes in, that's where the network comes in. Certainly don't mean to suggest or to minimize the marketing effort, but truly the expertise needed to get it to closing, particularly in today's environment where mortgage underwriting is extremely difficult. Appraisers have a very difficult job because of the criteria that's been established for that industry, and many times we become a resource on both sides. As far as the auction companies, they serve a purpose. However, they have a different market. They have a very different modality where in our case, we only really need one person interested in the property and we can negotiate a transaction. In an auction, for it to be effective, you need to have two people interested in it that are not only interested in it, but have the means and the ability to close the transaction, generally speaking, with no contingencies. So there's no chance to apply for a mortgage afterward. They have to work that all out beforehand. Indeed, they may have to get an appraisal beforehand, depending on what their lender's requirement is. And so there's a lot of people who are in some ways shut out of the auction market. So from a standpoint of competing with them, you have to recognize that while there's some advantages to it, you probably have significantly shrunk the pool of buyers available for a given property on an auction service. So the two paradigms being that the auction service, with the advantages they may bring, also bring the disadvantages of reducing your pool of buyers and requiring two people at the auction who are serious about the property. The individual selling on their own may in fact find a buyer who is ready and willing to buy, but may lack the ability and or the professional expertise to actually bring it to closing, and in not a few cases the transaction falls apart and then we wound up picking up the pieces afterwards. So we don't compete in the sense of we don't advertise against other services. We simply advertise the value of our service and let the data speak for itself. Well, there's probably several, but the two that come to mind is RE/MAX is the only major franchise who has maintained national advertising for the last number of years, continues to maintain its national television presence, and by doing so has probably become the most recognized brand, certainly by most surveys would be the most recognized brand in the real estate marketplace. The second piece that probably sets RE/MAX apart and has allowed them to maintain their lead in the marketplace, particularly through some of the past few years when the market has been soft, is the business model they create for their sales associates. Literally each associate is running a micro business within the protective umbrella of the franchisee. So all of my 50-some salespeople actually are running their own business. They pay their own bills. They rent space from me, and they keep a disproportionate share of their commissions relative to other franchises. That has provided some stability for both the franchisee and for the franchisor for international, particularly during the slow periods, and has allowed the RE/MAX agents to prosper and continue to make a very successful career out of real estate even when the market has been tough.